Hello, you're listening to A Little Bit of Lagom, a podcast exploring how to find a more balanced, sustainable and mindful approach to living, to support your well-being, the well-being of others and of the planet too. My name is Marla and today I was speaking with Jill, also known as JamJarGill, a nickname that she developed based on the many uses that she has for jam jars, including tea bags, paper clips, taking salad to work, sugar, fruit, jam, candles, and so much more. Jill is a mother of two 3-year-old twin boys, and she's been blogging for around 10 years around a variety of topics. About 5 years ago, she decided that blogging was no longer just a hobby, and she wanted to turn this passion project into a genuine side hustle and personal brand. On her blog, she shares about so many things, focusing on well-being, eco-friendly living, cooking, interior design, and so much more. She also loves to support local and eco-friendly businesses who openly support sustainability and the green economy to help get these businesses off the ground and for them to become more mainstream. I was so touched when Jill got in contact with me about coming on the podcast, and it was so lovely having a chat with her and also meeting the twins as well. I hope that you enjoy the conversation, and if you're a new mum, I think definitely this one will be helpful and resonate with you. So let's get into today's interview. Hello.
Oh,
Hey, how are you?
yeah, I'm good, thank you. How about you?
Yes, I'm well. Nice to meet you, even if it's only digitally.
Hey, but it's nice though. I think this is just the new way, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
For sure.
Do you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just put some TV on for the kids so they don't need to start. Bear with me.
Okay, no worries.
Ah. Yeah, it's a bit of a crazy setup. I can't really show you with that. Well, actually, let me lift this camera so you can see. So this is our dining room / my office, and then sorry about the rocky camera. This is the space into the living room. So it's quite hard to get some privacy or quiet workspace, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, are you British or are you Swedish or are you mixed?
I am British. I'm Welsh. I grew up in Wales in the UK,
Okay.
and I came to Sweden actually only in September.
Okay.
So quite a recent thing. Yeah, so basically I trained as a dance artist and a sports massage therapist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, two things that obviously in COVID conditions both kind of not possible in any way.
No.
So yeah, it was kind of a tricky time during the lockdown and everything. And
Yeah.
one of
So, were you self-employed or?
I was finishing an apprenticeship with a dance company, and obviously all of that stopped during lockdown. So then, yeah, it kind of, everything was a bit up in the air. And
Yeah, sure.
yeah, so I'm now here living with a friend that I trained with, having bits of work here and there. And then the podcast is something I do as a passion project, because, yeah, I've always been very passionate about environmental sustainability and trying to kind of raise awareness for it and things like that. So
Absolutely.
that's how this podcast emerged, really.
I do kind of feel like the whole eco community has really kind of come together through all this pandemic stuff, and it's all very much, I believe in sort of like the whole concept of controlling the controllables and trying to focus in on that, and I think that has been quite a nice take on it. And obviously it's a complete roller coaster, this whole thing. We're all like up and down and up and down.
Yeah.
But I've always kind of been into personal development and all that sort of stuff ever since it used to be called self-help when I was like 19 or whatever. And I was first introduced to it. So, and I love sort of yoga and holistic. I try and sort of take those principles because I generally know them. And I go on and I read more and more books of a similar ilk. You quite often find there's a lot of common ground between the various books. and you're just like, okay, yeah, this is clearly the stuff that works then. let's try and get back into the routine. Let's try and do these things.
Definitely found that being in nature is something that has really grounded me in this time. So
100%.
yeah.
I'm so in that space, and like we were really lucky actually because well, we've lived in this house 10 years now, and we basically bought it because of the garden, because it was like 100-foot garden, and we were just like, oh my god, we can afford this, it's crazy, let's buy it. In our complete naivete that oh no, you don't need to worry about who's maintaining that though. Problem is, before you have children, you don't really feel like you can justify asking for help. I don't know why that is, and I hope that culture changes, because in reality, before we had kids, we were both working full time, we had more disposable income, and it would have made a lot of sense to actually get a cleaner, get a gardener at that point, keep on top of things, be happier in life. But it took to have children and then feel like, well, I can't do it all, for me to actually go, right, it's time to do those things now. The house obviously had to be sorted first, but unfortunately it meant the garden was just left, and it was basically literally a jungle of brambles, like a wall of brambles. And yeah, I kind of got to the end of my tether at the end of last year and just said, right, that's it.
We are fixing the garden.
And they haven't cleared it all, but they made a really good start, which meant that the first sort of 10-20 foot of it is now clear. And then we can so it's meant that we've had a usable space throughout like lockdown. I feel like we've now like got to a point where we've progressed it, and hopefully go get some grass down in the spring and stuff. So
great, progress is being made.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, one of the key things, I don't know if you've have you heard of Rachel Hollis at all?
I have not, no.
So she's like really big in the personal development space. She did a book which was recommended to me a couple of years ago called Girl Wash Your Face. She's American. And then she's done another one called Girl Stop Apologizing. And she does all like these health and wellbeing conferences and everything like that. But the thing which they launched during lockdown was 30 days challenge. That I found that really, really helpful. So you had to like write a joy list, and just like little things in life which you can still do, which bring you joy. And then you had to break it down into scheduling that into your day. So like one thing for me was to have a cup of tea in the garden without the kids to start my day. And, you know, that really helped me, and I've still carried that on now. Gives you that headspace, and the whole thing of being out in nature and just absorbing the sounds of the birds, and it's just so peaceful. It's such a nice thing which has come out of this. Come back to the whole sort of personal development thing about how you can't control situations, but you can control how you respond to situations. It's not going to be perfect every day. Some days you just need to wallow in it and feel a bit down, and that's fine. But other days you can try and pick yourself up and try and use these tools which you have to go, right, okay, I'm doing that. I mean, something which I have been quite religious about in the last sort of year or so is keeping a gratitude journal every day. And that really helps me. And I've actually found an app I really like to do that on, which you can include photos in and stuff. Gratitude Me, I think it's called. I'll send you the link, and we can always put it in the show notes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's really nice because it has like quotes, positive quotes, affirmations. What I like about it is, and you know, when I first started the gratitude journal process, again, which I used to do years and years ago, and people often say this, they kind of do it when they're going through a hard time. Like I used to do it when I was unemployed for a while, and I was really in the depths of whatever and just felt really down about everything. And I started doing it, and I'd write down things like, oh, I've got a roof over my head. And you kind of break your things down. And this is the thing which is so powerful about gratitude, is regardless of where you are in your life, I think there's always an opportunity to find something to be grateful for. And sometimes we just forget the basic things and to be thankful for the basic things. So the fact that you were able to eat today, the fact you were able to have clean water today, the fact that you were, you know, able to use your body and your body functioned, or even if it's not functioning entirely, then like be grateful for the bits which do function and all those sorts of things. And I used to put down, well, I have a car to drive. It may not be my perfect car, but, you know, it gets me from A to B and, you know, all these things. And it does just make you feel so much better. Very famous book. Do you know about The Secret?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's certain things in that book, I've read it a few times, but like there's certain things, pinch of salt. Premise which I love about it, and I do definitely agree with, is the whole what you focus on gets bigger thing. Like that energy, the power of energy and what you focus your energy on. So
Definitely. It's like that shift of perspective as well. I think sometimes, like what you were saying with the journaling, is like, remind those things that you can take for granted, and that actually
absolutely,
we're so lucky to have those things. And really wonderful.
Sometimes, you know, you really struggle to even find five things some days, and then but I always find like as soon as I think of one, I'm like, oh crikey, I have like all the things and I'm so lucky. And it's really good to sort of set yourself a challenge, especially in low mood, to go, right, no, I have a comfy bed, you know, I have, you know, clothes to wear, and all the things which I think, you know, in Western society we take for granted, a lot of the big stuff.
Definitely. I think there's something quite empowering in that as well, with kind of recognizing the things that you do have control over, and your perspective and where you decide to place that, and what you choose to feel grateful for is so valuable. I thought, whilst we're on the topic of kind of wellness and focusing on your mental well-being as well, taking a holistic approach is something that you value a lot, and I support that as well. I think it's super important. So I was wondering if you wanted to share why for you taking that holistic approach to your well-being feels so important.
I think, you know, it's one of those things where I've been practicing yoga since I was 15, actually. I found it when I was doing my GCSEs, and the first yoga teacher I had was absolutely amazing, because she had MS and she'd managed to reverse the effects of it through practicing yoga every day. I just remember being absolutely mind blown by the fact that she managed to completely transform her life and turn her life around just by bringing in a practice like that. And I've always loved yoga, more holistic natural health. My upbringing was a lot to do with pushing that sort of green agenda, and my mum just doing things like rejecting one supermarket over another because one of them had cardboard boxes on the exit and the other one only had plastic bags. And I mean, that was when I was a young child. I mean, don't really know why they don't have cardboard box areas anymore, because that's really something they should bring back. That's the thing that drives me completely potty about environmentalism, is like there's a whole bunch of stuff where we were like, okay, so if we actually went back to how we did things in the 50s, or how we did stuff in the 80s, like maybe not the 80s, the 80s is a bad decade, but like the 90s, you know, like you can be like, okay, so that actually really worked. So why are we not doing that anymore? All those sorts of things definitely affected me growing up. And then my experience since having the children is I started suffering with really bad insomnia. So my kids like slept through from sort of 3 months old. You're really lucky. But twins was a complete surprise to me. We had no twins in the family and everything like that. And then the birth was quite traumatic as well, and that I felt like I kept being hit with tidal waves, and everything was like, all my conceptions of what I thought parenthood was going to be was just like bam, no, bam, you know, kind of like we had like all girls in the family, everyone had girls, and then I had 2 boys and they were twins, and then I'd planned a C-section, and then my waters broke. So actually looking back on it now with the benefit of hindsight, I can kind of see how that played out, and I would refer to it as PTSD, also on the spectrum and postnatal depression. But I think it's kind of more, it's not a case of there's one definition of that. I think it's like a big, huge roller coaster, and some days are good and some days are bad, but the old cliche of, you know, it's the best job and it's the hardest job is certainly true. I think, you know, you just got to learn to be kind to yourself, and it almost takes the experience of going through it to learn those skills. And I think what's so scary in the beginning is you're so in survival mode, and then you're also kind of mourning your old life, and that's something which people don't talk about enough, because, I mean, people sort of make jokes about it. I don't know if you know Michael McIntyre, but there's like a wonderful sketch which I love, all about like how, you know, you people who don't have children yet, you have no idea. And then he goes into all these scenarios, and the really funny one is just like leaving the house, how you can just leave your house and you can be like, okay, leaving the house before kids, okay, I want to leave the house, okay, bye, and off you go. Like leaving your house with kids, you just got to do so much planning, and you just got to do all these things, and it's just, you do feel like you've had your freedom taken away, but then at the same time the juxtaposition is you've been given a meaning to life. Long story short, I went to the doctors when I had severe insomnia, and unfortunately I was in a place of real vulnerability and kind of literally said, please help me, I can't function on no sleep. And so they threw drugs at me, because that's what Western medicine does. Put me on Prozac, put me on sleeping tablets. I'd never ever touched antidepressants before. I'd always been very cautious of them, but I was in a real place of desperation, and they sort of said, well, just get through this first 6 weeks on these and then it'll like balance out and you'll feel so much better, etc. And it was actually the weekend of week 6, I met up with a friend who's actually a vet, so, and her sister-in-law is in pharmaceuticals as well, so she knows, and she's suffered with anxiety and depression herself throughout her life. And I explained to her the whole scenario, and I said, oh yeah, and they've put me on Prozac. And she was like, oh yeah, I tried that for exam stress when I was doing my veterinary qualification, and I came right off it because it caused insomnia. And I was like, what? What? Because I'd gone to them with insomnia but not depression, and they'd said to me, oh no, insomnia is always a symptom of something else, so you must be depressed. And I was like, well, I don't feel depressed. So they'd convinced me to go on this. And when
despite knowing it causes you what you're going to get.
I know. And then I'd gone back and said, well, it's not working. So their response was just to up my dose. And they kept like upping my dose and upping the dose of the sleeping tablets as well. It was just absolute madness. But I think this is a struggle, is when you're in a place of vulnerability and then their resources are pushed to the absolute limit as well. So they need a quick solution. There isn't with this stuff. I was on the phone to 111 the next day and just like, get me off this. And I was off it within the next week. By this point, I'd been signed off work because I literally wasn't sleeping at all. So then the sleeping tablets started working once the Prozac was out of my system. But then I went on this whole journey with that, and you're supposed to be on those for an absolute maximum of 4 weeks. I was on them for 8 months. And basically, it's an illusion that they're making you sleep. They're not making you sleep, they're tranquilizers. So they basically knock you out, but you're not actually, your brain isn't actually getting sleep. It's almost like being knocked out at the dentist, that sort of thing. So you always woke up groggy. It was when I did the group therapy, which was, to be fair to the NHS, through the NHS, was really great course actually. And it was kind of the point when it turned around for me, because I actually found a sense of community within that class of other people dealing with similar things. The first thing that came out of the first class was to connect to community with your particular problems. I then joined a bunch of insomnia support Facebook groups from around the world, and that was really helpful, but also a bit terrifying as well, because again, I knew that the Zopiclone I was on was only supposed to be a short-term solution. There were people in those groups which had been on it for 20 years. And I was like, wow, how is this? How is this? And I think that was a real eye-opener to me. And then because I think a lot of insomnia is linked to hormones, I think an awful lot of stuff is linked to hormones. I don't think we know how much and how important hormones are anyway. But a lot of people suffer with insomnia when they go through that sort of premenopausal, menopausal stage as well. The problem with then going on sort of Zopiclone and stuff like that is the side effect of long-term usage can be Alzheimer's, which is just like, again, head F. And I was just like, the more I learned, the more I was like, I don't want to be on this anymore. This is not good news, you know. But the flip side of the scenario is I'd got to this point where I was scared if I don't take it tonight, then I won't sleep. And it was struggle to know how much of that was psychological and how much of that was actual. Got me into just looking at other alternative solutions. And it's funny how things sort of come about in life, because I'm all sort of connected up with blogging opportunities which come through on emails, and you can connect up with different like networks which send you through things which you can then apply to product test and that sort of thing. Basically got through these ones, and there was one which was a self-development book written by a sort of holistic, is she an acupuncturist? I think acupuncturist. And then another, to test CBD oil. And something I'd heard about, something I didn't know that much about. And it was a fully organic brand based out of Bristol. And I was like, well, that sounds good. And it sounds safe. And like, let's look into it. And so I went for it. That sort of all coincided with, let's try that. And I was then put on furlough. Well, this is my opportunity. If it doesn't work and I don't sleep, then at least I'm at home. And so I just kind of went for it. I guess that whole experience has got me back onto the whole holistic path again. And then it just all links in with what I want to do and what I want to put out into the world in terms of health, well-being, environmentalism. Let's look more at nature for solutions. Let's look less at money and drugs for solutions, you know, and that whole thing really.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. It feels like there's this want for a quick fix that drugs quite often can bring. And obviously there are a lot of conditions that do need drugs for them, but I think we've become so reliant on them that rather than investing in something that financially isn't drugs, connecting with other things as well, I think can have such an impact on your well-being, and everything is very interconnected. And I think this is the thing, is that you're absolutely right, and I'm completely agreeing with you, there are obviously conditions where you need to look at drugs, and drugs need to be part of the scenario. It's about looking at, even in that extreme scenario where you're having to go down that route, then have something running alongside it, and you can look at the holistic side running alongside it, whether that be for your mental well-being whilst you're going through that. And I just think that's absolutely the way things should be. It should be partnership, and it should be holistic health. And for whatever reason, there just still seems to be, and it's fading slightly, but this Eastern-Western medicine split. And I'm just like, well, why is that? And why don't we look at it holistically? And why don't we question why we're doing these things? And it's convenience, it's money, it's the fact that, you know, pharmaceuticals and money run the industry, unfortunately. And I just think it's horrific as well, the kind of idea of being given a drug to improve one aspect that you're struggling with, but then you're also on another drug which is counteracting the impact of the other, like what you were saying with the insomnia. You were given a tablet that was completely causing what you were trying to get rid of. It just makes no sense.
And I think this is the other thing I learned with sort of drugs, and the first time I learned it actually was when I went through a phase of having bad acne, and then I had very strong acne medication which you are only allowed to take short term, and it did sort out my skin, but it caused me other problems. And I think the thing was, that was when it hit me that, oh, okay, so everything that you take which is like an extreme fix for something is going to by default break something else. And so actually in the ideal world, it's far better to take a more gentle approach, which might not fully fix whatever problem A was, but
it doesn't cause B, C, D.
Yeah. And that's what I mean, like by the holistic, it is just like, look at your whole body, look at how it's all interconnected. I think for me, it took to have children to really understand that, and it really, I mean, I think I was always brought up to believe like your body is a temple and look after it and everything like that. But I think when you go through growing and birthing twins, you really do have a different level of appreciation for your body and just how incredible.
Yeah, for sure. Like you grew two human beings. You grew two human beings inside yourself. Like it's incredible. Yeah.
It's crazy. So I think it's just an opportunity to like re-look at how you look at things. Yeah,
definitely. So for anyone who was wanting to take a more holistic approach to their well-being, or wanted to focus more on how to look after themselves, do you have any little tips? I know you mentioned like journaling and being in nature, but I was just wondering if you had a few tips for people on ways that they can kind of take care of themselves more holistically.
I think something which has been really powerful for me is just how doing little things every day makes a big difference, and it doesn't have to take up that much time in your day. So like the traditional way of keeping fit and healthy, certainly in my sort of teens and 20s, was go to the gym 3 times a week for like a 2-hour session. But actually I think there's for me a way which fits around my life so much better now, in that some days I manage 5 minutes of yoga, some days I manage 15, sometimes I manage 30, but I get so much more, and my body seems to respond to doing it every day far better than doing it intensely once a week. And I think the whole thing of, I don't have time, literally if you do 5 minutes, I've even discovered things like there's a whole range of videos on YouTube called bed yoga. So literally if you, the last 5 minutes before you fall asleep, you do a few stretches, and it's amazing how even doing that versus not doing that is just so empowering, both mentally and physically.
Yeah, and also that versus scrolling through Facebook or social media for 5 minutes, I think that's something that is a void that can suck so much time for some people. Absolutely.
That's something which I do try, obviously it's quite challenging as an influencer who's trying to build her brand for me, and it is addictive. I haven't watched that Social Dilemma problem.
Watch it. You need to.
I've heard it's really good and it's on my watch list, but I haven't got to it yet. The whole thing that all these things are a dopamine hit is quite scary, but it's also, on the other hand, it's kind of just being mindful of it and like working out what can you do in your own life to change things. I got into podcasts and I started listening to Oprah Winfrey's, I always loved Oprah, but she does this podcast called Super Soul Sunday, where she interviews people. But she actually interviewed Ariana Huffington. Do you know the Huffington Post?
Ah, yes. Wow.
Yeah. So the Huffington Post, I'd been following for quite a few years, in that it's positive, empowering media and everything. But so it was a really, when I saw that come up as someone she interviewed, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Anyway, she had burnout herself, Ariana Huffington, because she was a media mogul and she was just go 24/7. And it took for her to have that burnout, which was quite extreme from memory, what she was saying about she just wasn't having any sleep. And then I can't quite remember if she collapsed at work or like there was a catalyst which kind of made her go, oh, crikey, need to sort stuff out here. And she changed her whole business model based on that. And another thing that she did is she started leaving her phone outside her bedroom. Sometimes I feel like you get messages drip fed to you throughout the years, and then you're like, oh, I ignore that. No, I don't want to do that thing or whatever. And then it gets to a point where you go, okay, right, really probably should try that now. Because I'd had friends saying it to me, oh yeah, it's all like toxic and everything else. And one of the things which I had been trying was using the Headspace app. I hadn't gotten with it that well, because for me, meditation in complete silence when my mind was so busy, I know that's kind of the point of it, but I really struggled with that. Whereas bringing yoga into my day so I had movement with it worked better for me personally. But I did try and do one of the sort of month, you know how they do like a listen every day, and I got a few in, and I'd listen to it as I was going to sleep at night. It started being a positive thing, and then a few days in, it suddenly says, right, so we really highly recommend that you leave your phone outside of your room because it's really detrimental to your health, etc., etc. And I was just like, well, hang on, well, what do I listen to this on then? I don't understand. And I'm still a bit confused, because there are the whole, like, both with the Calm app and with the Headspace app, there's sleep stories, bedtime stories, meditative, kind of go to bed stories, but then both of them, if you were to interview them, ask you to leave your phone outside your room. So I don't really quite understand. And that was kind of one of the things. But then I listened to this Ariana Huffington thing, and then she went on to write a book on sleep and how important sleep was actually. And I just kind of took the mindset that, okay, if she can do it in her position when she's running a multinational media company, then I can do it. And it just kind of gave me that perspective on it. And I've never gone back since. My phone charges on the landing. And the other thing which I try and do, and sometimes I'm better at it and other times I'm not, is I try and, from when I go up to get ready for bed and have my shower and like have that wind down period, that always works better for a night's sleep. Sometimes it's not always possible because you'll go right until the last minute, but what I try and do is like set myself goals, which, because you've got to kind of find balance between not making yourself feel guilty and not putting so much like rules and regulations around it that almost feels like, oh, I'm being naughty, because then that can trigger anxiety. So you've got to be careful with that as well, I find. So what my sort of in-between route was like, okay, so from that point in the evening when I go upstairs, I'm not allowed to look at Instagram anymore. I'm not allowed to look at social media anymore, but I am allowed to use my phone for my gratitude journal, for audiobooks and for podcasts. And that works well when I do that. And then when I go to bed, it plugs in on the landing and I go to bed. So.
Nice. That's an awesome system. I think that would be super valuable for people for sure. Yeah. And going back to what you were saying with meditation and mindfulness, I completely relate to the kind of the approach for me with yoga works so much better, because that physical movement gives my my thoughts somewhere to direct themselves. Whereas I find if I sit there just with my thoughts, it's just too much going on.
Whilst I've got such young children, whilst I've got so much going on, even though I can see it would be valuable and I can approach it, obviously not at the moment with the pandemic, but I've really enjoyed like going for retreat days or retreat evenings or crafts and that sort of thing. So doing it like little mini ones, but it actually being part of my daily practice, I think I'd struggle at this point. Whereas I kind of put that on the back burner and think, well, I'll hopefully come back to that once life calms down a little bit. But for now, yoga is a good solution for me.
Oh, great. I'd love to move on now to talking a bit more about how you came into prioritizing eco-friendly living and living more sustainably. I know you said it was something that was always kind of embedded as you were growing up from your parents, and I'd love to hear more about how you came into prioritizing it, where you started, those kind of things.
Sure. It has always been part of my psyche. It's always been something which I've tried to think about. What a big catalyst for me really trying to go for it fully as much as I can and getting into promoting it and really making myself an eco-influencer was the War on Plastic programme, which was on the BBC. I think there were certain things about it which just completely blew my mind in quite a depressing way in some respects, because I think before that programme came out, a lot of us were in the position where we're like, okay, you know, I'm one of the good ones. I'm putting my plastic in the plastic recycling, so that's okay. Obviously, I'm trying to cut down where I can, but it's very hard to do. I still stand by the point that it's very hard to do. The fact of the matter is, what is happening to that plastic was highlighted in this programme, and I'd kind of heard through, I have an auntie and uncle who have always been particularly into environmentalism, and I remember them saying to me years ago, you know, try and buy glass where you can because plastic generally gets shipped abroad. But I hadn't really thought about it more than that, but this programme highlighted that it literally is getting shipped to Indonesia. We don't have the processing for it here, and the problem is once it gets to Indonesia it doesn't get monitored and it ends up in a rainforest just being dumped. It's horrendous, and it's literally like the whole approach to it is, oh, it's not in our backyard anymore, so that's fine, it's over there. But it's like getting burnt, and like Greenpeace are there like saying, look, these local children are getting nosebleeds because no one's monitoring what's happening to this. And I was just like, what the hell? And then the other side of it was the whole amount of microplastic particles in our atmosphere, and they did tests around that, and they got one of the universities involved, and that was horrendous as well. The other sort of real key thing was that they interviewed someone who worked for the company, the waste company, who receives all the waste from all the councils, and they were saying how, well, end of the day, nothing is going to change here whilst all of the financial onus is on the councils. You need corporates to take some financial responsibility for the end of life of the products for them actually to care. And it's sad, but money does talk, and I think, you know, really that's what we have to do. But then again, it's about going back to the beginning of the conversation, controlling the controllables, and just trying to make and promote in your own life the things which you can do. Came across a really interesting podcast the other day called Sustainably-ish. She's really great, but she's talking about doing an eco Christmas. But she talks, what I love about her whole mentality to thing is she talks about always going for the low-hanging fruit. What can you do? What are the little changes which you can make, which will make a big difference? And the fact of the matter is, we're not looking for everyone to do zero waste perfectly. It's about everyone doing it a little bit, but en masse, and that is genuinely going to make a difference. And that's what I love about being part of the eco community. And I think it's about building my brand in a way where I feel so good about what I'm trying to promote. And I want to feel proud of my brand all the way through from the ground up, and what I'm putting out into the universe, and how I'm hopefully helping people and educating people as to, well, what can you do differently with your kids? What can you do differently in your life? But there's always like so many different choices nowadays. I read this really interesting book by Jen Hatmaker, and she is a preacher's wife in America, and it's called 7. And she basically goes through 7 months of less. So each month she picks a category, so she picks food, and then she only picks 7 items that she's allowed to eat that month, and she does it with consumerism as well. But it's basically taking that Christian concept of fasting. But what's interesting about it is like, okay, so you fast on one particular part of your life for a month, and then you suddenly realize just how much choice you actually have. And it's kind of been really eye-opening. She says when she breaks it down in the consumerism month, so she talks about the multi-personality disorder of positive consumerism. And unfortunately what it is, because the world is all about making money, that it's actually getting into that acceptance piece that, okay, if I want to go organic, that doesn't necessarily I'm going to be plastic free, but at least I'm going organic. So that's a positive step in the right direction. Same goes for fair trade, same goes for plastic free. And I mean, for example, with our scenario, milk is obviously a big part of young children's life. And for me, it was very important to buy organic milk because I didn't want it to have the hormones and the additives in. And also cows generally are like free roaming. I think they are generally in the UK anyway. I mean, my sister's very pro organic milk in America because cows are literally kept in sheds if it's not organic, which is awful. It's just the whole additive side. But then the flip side is, and this is where the market needs to shift, is I can buy a pint of organic milk for like 50p. But if I get in a glass bottle from the milkman, it's £1.20 for a pint. And I'm like, well, why is that down to the consumer to sort that out? Why are glass bottles and reusable bottles not more readily available? Because I'd love to do that. But, you know, I have to make my choice because we're on a budget. And I think that's what needs to shift, is legislation needs to filter down from the top and actually make these changes.
No, in terms of it kind of filtering down from the top, I completely agree. Like we do have responsibilities as consumers, but there's so much that isn't in our control that companies need to be held accountable for. Because, for example, like you were saying, if a company was held accountable for the plastic that they were using, the impacts that's having on the environment, and that financially that burden was with them, then us as consumers, the finance shouldn't come into it when we're trying to make a better choice between plastic, glass, organic or not. Like those things we shouldn't be paying the price for.
And so that's kind of the goal of my brand as such. That's my mission statement, is I want to actively help make green the mainstream in whatever way I can. And at the moment, you know, obviously I'm generally product testing for a lot of startup companies who are just trying to get their feet off the ground, but that's helping in its own right, because if I can help them get off the ground and get more popular, then hopefully more people will use them and I'm promoting them. So it's all like helping, but at the moment we're in a space where this is still new, which is complete madness. Why is this still new? I think the thing which really hit me about this whole program was, you know, I really wish we could go back to whoever invented plastic and just stop that from happening, because, you know, the world was actually functioning completely fine without plastic in the first place. And it seems to me that actually it's caused so many more problems than it has solutions. But then you look around and you look at, you know, just in an average room, how there are things. I mean, I was just looking as I was talking to you, well, my computer's made of plastic, of course it is, you know, and my keyboard's made of plastic and stuff like that. So like, could that be made out of something else? Probably not. So there are things which need to be made out of plastic, but there's so many things which don't need to be made out of plastic. And I think actually making these small changes, which you can, every change which you make is a win. And there are things which you can do which can give you a long-term change. For example, I've just done a post last week on switching to reusable period products. And, you know, that's something, well, yeah, it was an investment, but the way I handled that was to buy a little bit of it each month. And so each month I was a little bit greener. So I wasn't completely all green straight away, because it costs quite a lot of money to build up that product. But once you have it, then you have it, and you don't need to buy any more sanitary products. And it's just like, why are we not doing that? Why are we not educated to do that? Why did it take me to 37 to make that switch? You know, it's kind of crazy. But actually, in researching that blog post, it was quite interesting, because I kind of went down a rabbit hole on period poverty, and how there was this amazing company called the Little Red Box Company, who had really, really pushed to solve period poverty in the UK, and had successfully brought in legislation that the governments will fund period products for the whole of the school system. And that literally came in at the beginning of the year. So any school-age children are going to have free period products. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, you know, because surely it shouldn't be the case that people are having to miss school because they're on their period. That is just, what are we, Victorian? Like, what's going on? Then I found another piece of legislation which was then brought to the fore by the Green Party. And I think because of all, you know, the pandemic and everything else going on, it hasn't necessarily gone through all the stages of government yet. And excuse my naivety on politics, but, you know, we haven't obviously been taught about that in school, which is like a whole other problem. It's sort of saying that, well, guys, don't lose this opportunity. You're providing free period products. You know, start educating people at the beginning of their period that they should be buying green products, provide some green products as part of that. And so hopefully, because that, I mean, it was, I forget what it's called now, but it's kind of the first stage of it going to be discussed in the House of Commons, and it's signed by all the politicians. So, I mean, it's positive that it definitely seems to be in process and people are starting to think about these things. I mean, there is a bit of a feeling of, is it too little, too late? I hope not. I like to be an optimist.
We definitely need optimism at the moment, for sure. Like, I think it's getting that balance as well between, we need to become aware of the situation and what's happening and what needs to change, but we need to have hope that these changes can happen, which I think is really important. And
I think that sometimes, like, from the ground up it's working, because like the changes in packaging and stuff like that are starting to make a difference. I mean, the whole thing with have you heard about the whole wonky vegetable campaign?
Yes.
That was started by the Jimmy and Jamie food fight on a Friday night, who went to like one of the big supermarkets and they did a feature on it, and I actually saw that episode. It was amazing. But they went to all the big supermarkets and they were like, well, why aren't you selling this stuff? Why are you making us chuck all this stuff? And they were like, well, the consumers wouldn't want to buy it. They want a perfect carrot. And I'm just like, do they? What are you basing that on?
Like, did I tell you that? Did I say that?
No, exactly. And that's what drives you mad, is like, you need someone to actually question the status quo here. Because at that point in time, which was actually before I had children and when I had a bit more of a budget, I used to get Able and Cole boxes. And it just used to make me laugh, because like, there was a whole thing with Able and Cole boxes. Oh, look, it's a wonky, funky carrot, you know, and people were posting on social media, and that's like the top end of the market. Meanwhile, you've got the mainstream supermarkets going, oh, the consumers don't want that. No. They just want a perfectly, completely cylinder. Why? Why do you think that? People don't need as much choice as you think they need either. They don't need 3 aisles of toothpaste. You know, this is the thing we need to go away from as well. We need to get rid of this ridiculous, crazy amount of choice, which just completely confuses the consumer.
Yeah.
You know, it's there's a lot that could be done in that space too.
Definitely. And just promoting actually selling what is a more sustainable, ethical option, rather than bombarding us with so many choices and putting it on the responsibility of the consumer to try and figure out what's the best thing to do. Like, it's just
It's complete madness. And I just think, you know, the ethical brands really need a kickstart from the government. They really need a boost, and they need to get subsidized, because things like that have happened in the past when it's of the right agenda for the wrong things. You know, things get taxed which shouldn't be taxed, and things get, you know, they have the power to do these things. They did it with cigarettes, they did it with period products, you know, so it's just like they need to actually make the shift.
Yeah, and like, I think that's ridiculous to put a tax on things like period products, which is like a bodily function that is natural.
I know.
So to tax
that was the case for years.
Yeah, but then not tax something that is being so detrimental to the environment, that we're being shown is so detrimental. So why is it still made so easy for companies to produce these things?
Yeah. I think this is like the really important stuff which actually needs to make a change. But what I find really positive, and I guess I've really got into the whole eco community on Instagram and things over lockdown and over this pandemic season, is that, you know, people are starting to think outside of the box, and the whole green agenda is no longer got that whole, oh, you must be a hippie, you must be a tree hugger or whatever, and connected to it, and it's becoming more mainstream. And this was the point that Sustainably podcast was making, is that, you know, it really is like everyone working from the ground up. But then there's interesting things as well, like she talks about the power of stay-at-home mums and mums who are generally doing the food shopping, because, you know, we haven't generally moved forward from that statistically. And then you get into this whole space as well where people, I saw like a eco blogger who was a man posting the other day, and he literally said, but where are all the men? and it does make you think, well, why is this? It's still seen big society wise as a bit of a wishy-washy concept. How do you think we get over that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. I think there's still such a long way to go in making sort of a sustainable and environmental space more accessible, because it's not, and there's still a lot of voices we're not hearing from. There's so many kind of marginalized communities. I think also ability, you know, in terms of disabled people having a voice in this, Indigenous people having a voice in this, people of color, like all of these different aspects of society, younger people, older people, people with from a lower socioeconomic background. I think it's so crucial that all of these people have a voice, and because at the end of the day, a lot of the actions that we are taking are impacting on marginalized communities, people from a lower socioeconomic background, people.
I mean, you have to look at things like, why is it still the case that it is still cheaper to buy less healthy food?
Exactly.
You know, and this is where the legislation piece needs to come in. And actually, I mean, this was something which was highlighted on that War on Plastic program, that even if it's the case that you make the decision, hey, I'm going to buy loose fruit and veg, it costs you something like 30-40% more than it does to buy stuff in packages. And you're just like, why? What is that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Hi.
Oh,
There you go. Katie, do you want to come say hello?
Oh.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh.
I guess the thing with them is I just want it to be normal for them. I think, you do have the opportunity, and sometimes it's first time parent naivety, that you kind of think, oh, your kids are a white sheet of paper, and they're not born a white sheet of paper, they're born as their own personalities and things. But I think you do have power in the kind of way that you choose to give them an upbringing, and you choose things like, I always get them to help me undo the food shopping and to take it all out of the packages and stuff, and they'll be like, oh, which bin does this go in? And I'll be like, well, look at the logos, look for the line, and every time we have to put something in the main waste, I'll go, well, unfortunately that one needs to go in the main waste, but it's symbolism as well. Like, we have our landfill waste bin is like a small little dinky bin, and our recycling bin is a giant full-size kitchen bin, and it's stuff like that as well. I want them to understand that what we should be aiming for. I think those are the things which you can try and control.
And going off that, I really wanted to chat to you a bit about how any advice you would give to parents with young children, kind of balancing trying to live more eco-friendly whilst balancing that with parenthood. From my experience, I can't I can't give any advice on that. I think it's so important that
I think it was something which shocked me in the first sort of year and a half of their existence. I probably actually became less eco than I'd been for 5 years previous to that, because it was about convenience, and it was about trying to find just get through it, just survive it, really, and certain choices which you had to make. I did do things like, are you getting up? Where, when it came to my baby shower gifts, I think this is something which is good advice, is that to actually ask for eco baby products for your baby shower, because again, it's a case that it's not really affordable generally. What have you got? Are those binoculars? No? Are you going down? Okay. It wasn't really affordable to me, like nappies, for example. I had to make that choice. I asked for biodegradable nappies for my baby shower, but once that supply ran out, then we had to go with Aldi, because we had twins and we were going through a hell of a lot, and we had to just make that choice. But then, you see, I made a choice further down the line that since the boys have been in just pull-ups overnight, I've switched to natty. And I actually think the nappy market is missing a trick with this, because there is a whole section of people who can't afford biodegradable nappies as their day nappy. But when the child is potty trained during the day and they just need to wear them at night, then you obviously need to buy far less of them. And I've actually approached those companies and said, I'd love to product test for you, and I'd love to promote this point, because I actually think this is the kind of thing which really frustrates me. And they're not seemingly interested in that, which I think is a real shame. I still carry on with it because it's shocking. That's the whole nappy scenario is absolutely shocking, because a biodegradable nappy rots down in about 5 years versus a standard nappy takes 500 years. And no one's dealing with that. That's not something which is really sorted. Again, it's something which really, it shouldn't be down to the consumer, because the kind of price difference you're talking about is the difference between 4p a nappy for an Aldi nappy to 14p a nappy. Now, when you're talking about how many you're getting through, it is not
huge
affordable.
Difference.
Yeah, it's not affordable. I guess my point is to maybe not make yourself feel so hard, because there is a season where it's just a case of getting through in the first year. And whilst it would be great to be eco in that time, I think you shouldn't necessarily be riddled with guilt if you don't manage to do that. But it's about when you have the ability to make the choices again, to try and make those little choices. And I think that's what you can try and do, because again, when I switched to going for the eco nappies, then I went for eco nappy bags as well, and I went for eco wipes, biodegradable wipes as well. I did manage to successfully keep to cheeky wipes, washable wipes for the first year, but to be honest, it ended up being a bit of a nightmare, because then it was just another thing to wash, and the amount of washing which you do is just, don't even get me started. It's just horrendous. It's just horrendous. I think the point is, you don't need to be a martyr. You just need to make the choices when you can make the choices. I'm a big fan of like muslin squares, for example, and the boys will use them for everything, which are really worthwhile as well. Or using flannels. I always use flannels to wipe their faces after a meal and stuff like that. It's old school, simple stuff like that. When I was looking at baby food when they were first weaning, I actually, even though the organic brand is Ella, all that packaging isn't recyclable, or at least it's made of plastic, so it's not easily recyclable. And I actually stumbled across a jarred food called Hip Organic, which I think is a German brand, but they come in jars. And so they actually worked out cheaper, and they came in jars. So it's about doing a little bit of research around stuff as well.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Like, there are things out there that just coincidentally are the more eco-friendly and cheaper alternative, which is wonderful. It's just the hope that continues.
When I talk about that, so multiple personality disorder of eco-consumerism, count it as a win for everything that you do manage to do.
Definitely, yeah. So important. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll just burn ourselves out, because
100%.
Yeah, we need to remind ourselves of the positive steps we're taking, for sure. I'll just ask you the final question that I always ask on the podcast. And because my podcast is called A Little Bit of Lagom, and Lagom's about finding balance, kind of not too little, not too much, sweet spot in between. So I was just wondering, for you, what helps you find a little bit of Lagom in your life?
I think going back to sort of what I've touched on before, it's just trying to set realistic expectations with your day or with your decision making. It's not trying to do everything. It's not trying to fix everything. It's about, that's why my big thing, which I really want to promote, is conscious consumerism rather than mindless consumerism. Don't just buy because you need, or you feel you need to buy. Take a step back first and think to yourself, well, why? Where's it made? What's it made from? Can I make a choice here? Can I buy a secondhand version? Secondhand is one of the brilliant bridge things, which I just think basically all we need to do is remove the stigma around it. That's all we need to do. Because what I love about secondhand is that it's both budget friendly and it's environmentally friendly, and often you're giving back to charity as well. So it really is win-win-win. So it's about making those sorts of choices as well, and not just being overwhelmed by, okay, I can't afford any of it. It's like, well, how can I do this? Or maybe I could grow something. Maybe I've got the opportunity to use someone else's garden to grow something. Maybe I could get an allotment. Maybe I could just have a grow box on my windowsill and grow some fresh herbs. Yeah, I'm not managing to grow all the vegetables, but you know, I'm growing some herbs and actually my food tastes delicious as a result. So it's stuff like that. It's taking the small wins.
Yes, celebrating the little wins sounds like a super important thing. Yeah. And I just want to say as well, I'm so touched that you got in contact and that you wanted to do a podcast. It was really, really lovely.
I'm really excited to do this with you. I really am, because I just think I love being part of this eco community, and I love being able to share with people who are like-minded. You know, it really gives me hope for the future, that there are so many people out there who really are trying in their own ways to make their life a bit more green and a bit more sustainable.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, it's been so wonderful chatting with you. Do you have any last thoughts that you want to share? I mean,
that I'm always open to working with other green companies, and you know, please do get in touch if you want to work with me.
Awesome, cool. But yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you chatting. It's been really nice.
Super. Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. Apologies, it's gotten dark here. It started off light and then it's just nice drawing in.
I know, that's just the way it is. I think we might just go out in the garden for a bit of a run around, blow off a bit of steam before it actually gets dark.
Yeah.
Okay, take care. Have a lovely day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much to Jill for chatting with me. It was lovely to get to know you a bit better and hear about your journey to living more sustainably and sharing this message with the world. If you'd like to find out more about Jill's work, I'll attach links to her website in the show notes so that you can take a look at what she's getting up to. She also has a YouTube channel as well as the blog, and you can find all that information on her website. If you have any thoughts or questions on any of the podcast episodes, please feel free to drop me a message either on Instagram or via email. You can find me on Instagram at alittlebitoflagom, and my email account is alittlebitoflagom@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, I'd be so incredibly grateful, and you can do this on the Ko-fi account, which I'll have a link to in the show notes for this episode. Your support really means so much and helps keep the podcast going. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.